Hi, I'm Ben. Welcome to my channel. Coming up is a video I've shot about 2 years ago and I was very excited to get it to people, but there were lots of technical difficulties and it turned out pretty badly. But thankfully I've been able to clean it up with a bit of software I found and it's watchable now. You'll notice me, who is interviewing, and the interviewee, Hugh Miller, both look like we've got 100 Instagram beauty filters chucked on us, but it's not that. It's just the video's expanded from this to this. So bear with the quality issues. It's really worth watching. And one last thing, if you enjoyed Daniel Unsealed 1, Daniel Unsealed 2 is coming out. Click subscribe and the bell for notifications. And with that, enjoy the interview. We're here with Hugh Miller. Great to have you. We finally got there. So Hugh, would you just start the conversation by just letting the viewers know a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, I'm married and just widowed after 60 years. I earned my BS degree in chemistry from Ohio State University in 1953, which tells you my age. Then I joined Battelle Columbus Laboratories, which is a large research organization of about 2,500 people back in the same year. And then Uncle Sam took me away from Battelle in November of that same year, 1953. And there I spent most of my time at the Army Chemical Center in Maryland, where I was a clerk typist, and occasionally I worked in the lab as an analyst for uranium ores, where we did titrations to detect the amount of uranium in these ores from various countries. Very secretive at the time. I left the Army to return to OSU, mainly because I liked the research I was doing in the Army, and it was dealing with uranium. So I ended up taking 1/4 of courses in radiochemistry, nuclear physics, and spectroscopic analysis, and then returned to Battelle for the next 17 years. Now, what I did at Battelle Laboratory, as I said, there are 2,500 researchers there, so I was in the electrochemical engineering division, which works with the various electroplated coatings, many other different kind of coatings, including oxides. And this is important to my background in getting involved with dinosaurs, because we noticed that the coatings, I noticed that the coatings were black. Well, I put that in the back of my head and didn't think about it anymore. In 1968, I heard a clergyman, a theologian, say that I could believe in the theory of evolution, which I never even thought about up to that point, if I so desired, provided I believed that a soul was infused into the body of the evolved creature. And so I didn't give it any more thought until in 1969 or 70, and a agnostic friend who was a PhD in chemistry at Battelle gave me a book by Immanuel Velikovsky. And he says to me, I don't believe in evolution. He said, then he told me a story about he saw the coelacanth from South Africa back in his younger days. And he says, how can this be? It's supposed to be a fossil of some sort, but it's still alive. And he says, I don't believe it. Read Velikovsky and you'll see why. So I read Immanuel Velikovsky. I thought, oh, he's not a creationist, but he's telling me everything that the Bible's been telling me. And from then on, I doubted everything any theologian would say. And then I found a group of creationists, both Catholic and non-Catholic, who convinced me to join their organization called the Creation Research Science Education Foundation, started by a Church of Christ minister. We eventually got a Catholic priest in there too, and which is my faith. So we had a very excellent time for about 10 or 15 years, but meanwhile in 71, I joined CP Chemicals, and there I traveled 3 or 4 states, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana and parts of Western Pennsylvania. So I got to meet one heck of a lot of scientists, and some of them were creationists, those who were anti-evolutionists, shall we say. But the activists were in Pittsburgh. One of them was a PhD in geophysics, worked for an oil company in Pittsburgh. And so he and I got interested in the plexi-fossil human footprints with dinosaurs. And then we also dated, carbon-14 dated fossil wood, dinosaur bones, amber, and other fossils of major accelerated mass spectrometers using funds from one of the scientists that I met in 1994 at the International Creation Conference, where we had already given 2 papers. Year 2000, we acquired a scintillation counter, which we adapted to carbon-14 dating. I worked that lab as a technician for 3 years, learning the pre-treatment programs and so forth and so on, and to clean up samples. But we never dated bones. We only dated wood, and we found out after about 3 years that the equipment was insufficient to give us significant reproducible ages for about anything except up to maybe 5,000 years. So knowing from 1990 that dinosaur bones were in the range of roughly 23,000 years to 30,000 years roughly, we had to abandon that program. And I left the Creation Research Science Education Foundation and started my own organization called the Paleo Group. And from that, developed into the International Paleochronology Group with 14 advisors from paleontology, nuclear physics, and so forth and so on. So that kind of gives you the background, how I got involved with carbon-14 dating. I love research, and one thing led to another.
Yeah.
Still do it whenever we get the funds, which this gentleman from France provides. He's a sedimentologist, every so often.
So the main reason I contacted you, well, I found out about you, was to do with the carbon-14 in dinosaur bones, but particularly that came from the soft tissue. Now, can you tell the viewers a little bit about Mary Schweitzer and what she discovered and what that led to?
I have to. As a matter of fact, I plan on reading to you what she actually wrote. It's very short. This is her paper, Soft Tissue, Vessels and Cellular Preservation in Tyrannosaurus rex, by Mary Schweitzer and 3 other authors, including the famous Jack Horner, who was the advisor to Jurassic Park movies.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Right. She says, soft tissues are preserved within hind limb elements of Tyrannosaurus rex, Museum of the Rockies, specimen 1125. Removal of the minimal phase reveals transparent, flexible, hollow blood vessels containing small, round microstructures that can be expressed from the vessels into solution. Some regions of the mineralized bone matrix are highly fibrous, and the matrix possesses elasticity and resilience. 3 populations of microstructures have cell-like morphology. Thus, some dinosaurian soft tissues may retain some of their original flexibility, elasticity, and resilience. And you can find a 15-minute report on 60 Minutes CBS, which shows her pulling the soft tissue apart and flexing it back, okay? Supposedly 75 million years old.
How do they maintain a straight face when they say that, knowing what we know?
Yeah, well, it's been confirmed, at least the collagen has been confirmed many times in dinosaurs all the way back to allegedly 175 million years. And that's where carbon-14 is so devastating to the theory of evolution and she is desperately, I think you asked me that question. How about iron? Iron protects this fibrous material and the soft tissue,
Yeah.
right?
I saw it. There's another YouTube video that explains it very basically. Yeah. It
Well,
seems to.
let me try to explain this to you, Mary Schweitzer. You remember, my dear, when you dissolved the material, it was calcium carbonate, around the soft tissue? You remember that? Well, anyway, let me tell you, Mary, that was what preserved the soft tissue, was the calcium carbonate that was precipitated around the soft tissue and other materials for all those years, all those years being only thousands of years, not millions, based upon carbon-14 dating. And we hope someday that you'll finally carbon-14 date the bones that you've been working with.
Well, that's the question I often asked is why wouldn't they try carbon-14 dating it?
Well, they have a preconceived idea of how we got here, and they have to support that. They don't like to be blindsided, so they just ignore this the true data that has been accepted. That is, the carbon-14 dating has been accepted as a most reliable of all the dating methods since about 1960, with greatly improving the precision by the accelerated mass spectrometer in 1978 or thereabouts. Now, all the major laboratories are using the very expensive multi-million-dollar accelerated mass spectrometers, which gets them up to about a maximum of 60 to 80,000 years.
Am I right to say that carbon-14 dating is the only dating method that can be verified at all? Because don't all the other rubidium, strontium and all those things, they require millions of years because their half-lives are so large. So you can't actually verify that.
They should live so long. All right.
Yeah.
Anyway, let me proceed with the PowerPoint presentation so we don't take much time have we already spent with my yakking away here?
Oh, I don't know. It's fine. It's YouTube. They can handle it.
There it is. Okay.
We have the technology.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. We'll try to get through these slides rather quickly. There are about 35 of them. And this is what we call wishful thinking. It's not real science. At the base, here is a Triceratops skull. That is supposed to be upwards of 65 million years old. And then as you proceed up the evolutionary ladder here, you have two mammals, a pair of them, and they're supposed to have started to evolve at that time, roughly 65 million years ago. Then you've got the apes all the way up to kind of a man, a human-like man. And you've got the other mammals, camels, and you've got the Neanderthal, and then you got us. So this is 65 million evolution, or 30,000 radiocarbon years of abrupt appearance. This is our theory. I like to use the word abrupt appearance to describe the theory that creationists like to use, which I am, but I prefer to be an anti-evolutionist.
Yep.
So I think I explained that to you, that I'm unsure, let's put it this way, of Usher's chronology of 4,000 and 6,000 years for the flood and creation. It could be much more than that, but less than 10,000 years. But I do believe that a day is 24 hours, as noted in the Bible. This is our first paper, a recent carbon-14 dating of fossils, including dinosaur bone collagen. Then we asked the question, are the results a confirmation of rapid formation of geologic column as modern sedimentology studies have predicted? This was in 2009 and presented at the National Research Council of Italy, a conference that we were permitted to have there. Later, a book was published with this paper in it. It became a huge controversy in Italy. 5 years later, we were able to get on a program in Italy, similar to the History Channel in the United States, of 30 million viewers, in which we were allowed to present our data
Did they present it in a positive light at all?
Oh, yes, definitely positive, because this
Oh,
was
wow.
anomalous information from worldwide. So it was like a 2-hour program in which they went all the way to the Museum of Natural History in London. And then they took pictures of dinosaurs and then talked about us, saying that they're 20 to 40,000 years old only. Okay? Very positive light. You asked the question, formation of carbon-14. This is how it works. Cosmic rays enter the upper atmosphere, and these rays hit the nitrogen-14, and it changes the nitrogen-14 into carbon-14, and carbon-14 intersperses into the lower atmosphere, into plant life. Animals eat it. We all end up with carbon-14, and we have roughly 1 part in 1 trillion in our bodies right now. Okay, but it decays back into nitrogen-14 over a period of 5,730 years, roughly. Half of it, if you had a pound of carbon-14, which you won't have, and in 5,730 years, you will have a half a pound, and so forth and so on, until you get to a point where the equipment can't detect anything beyond 60,000 years. This carbon-14, 12 is the ratio that they study. Carbon-14 to carbon-12. So that's 1 part in 1 trillion. It's decreasing over time, over 5,750 years, a half-life, we call it. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is a cartoon that we presented at the American Geophysical Union. We posted these in the hallway for the evolutionists to find at our hotel. So we showed that the Yukon giant bison was 30,810 years old, plus or minus 975. The dire wolf was 27,920. And dinosaurs were in the range of 22,000 to 30,000 years, same age range. So these two prehistoric humans, shall I call them, why does he always got to make friends, they're saying. And here is the dinosaur T-Rex type, hi to this wolf, and they're making friends, so sniffing each other. Yeah. So this was carbon-14 content and collagen and other bone fractions of dinosaurs. These are the 2 references. This one came from evidence for human modification of a late Pleistocene bison bone from the Klondike district of Yukon Territory, Canada. It was in a journal called Arctic. This is ours. Recent carbon-14 dating of fossils, including dinosaur bone collagen, are the results of confirmation of rapid formation of a geologic column as modern sedimentology studies have predicted. And then we have the website here. This is how they process the bones. The fossil bone is crushed up to 500 milligrams. The carbon dioxide evolves under a vacuum. And meanwhile, before that, acetic acid is used to remove superficial burial calcium carbonate. Remember I mentioned calcium carbonate that has to be removed to get to the soft tissue by Mary Schweitzer. Sodium hydroxide is optional, but it removes the organic contaminants. So we have to remove this contaminant, and then the CO2 evolves under vacuum. Hydrochloric acid removes calcium carbonate in the bone apatite. So you either date collagen, if there's sufficient amount, which rarely there is, or you date the calcium carbonate fraction of bone bioapatite. Now what happened is the bone bioapatite absorbs carbon. It replaces the phosphorus in the bioapatite, 0.6% only. But they can extract that, but they're very expensive equipment, and they can date that. So what happens is when collagen and bioapatite fraction dates are concordant, then these are the true radiocarbon ages. But like we have pointed out, the real age is probably far younger than those concordant ages. Here's kind of a summary. Carbon-14 in the atmosphere is not in equilibrium, but building up rapidly. It's not in equilibrium because back in the time of creation, the amount of carbon-14 was minuscule compared to what it now is. So it's building up to a point where it's now 1 part per trillion, but it's not in equilibrium. It's still building up. They date the bones based upon the 1950 samples of sugar beet that they collected from some island in the Gulf of Mexico, I think, or outside of that.
Any specific reason for using that?
That's a good question, because the nuclear testing brought more carbon-14 into the picture.
Okay, so our carbon-14 ratio has gone way up since then.
Yeah, but they're still going up, but now it has settled down a little bit. Now, since the
We stopped blowing things up.
Except for North Korea, of course. But the grass would even contain more carbon-14 back in the 60s and 70s, okay?
Okay, continue.
It suggests upper limit on the age of the whole system in the order of 10,000 years. The age of the Earth, based upon this growing amount of carbon-14, if you trace it back, then the age of the Earth would be no more than 10,000 years. The older the date, this is another factor for showing that the dates we get are way too old. The older the date, the greater the reduction. Don't ask me to explain that, please. The greater magnetic field in the past would decrease carbon-14 levels in the past, causing greatly exaggerated carbon-14 ages that we now get. So false order dates from old carbon. We threw this in because there's other reasons. Living things ingesting old carbon during their lifetime can give very old ages. And we'll give you an example. We got 10,000 radiocarbon years before the present for a living tree growing adjacent to a German airport absorbing fossil fuel gases. Okay? The fossil fuel gases would give ranges closer to 40 to 50,000 years in age when checked by carbon-14. So these living trees were absorbing gases that contain very low amounts of carbon-14. 17,300 to 24,750 years for plants growing in Montezuma well water depleted of modern carbon-14, meaning that it's very little. The carbon-14 in the water of this little lake reduced because of the higher concentrations of old carbon from the limestone that forms the foundation of this lake.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The limestone was laid down during the flood and had very little carbon-14 in it. So any dissolution of the limestone, which dissolves in a mild acid, would invade the lake and be absorbed by the plant life, the living plant life.
Here's a question for you based on that. So can you carbon date limestone?
Yes, you can, but you get such an old age that they would dismiss it. The carbon-14 labs would dismiss it.
Does it date in the same range as the dinosaur bones?
No. We dated wood from the limestone and dated wood from the clay between the limestone. The ages were 37,750 years for the carbonized wood in the clay, but in the limestone, which contains much older material, the wood in that thing was dated at 49,000 years. See the difference?
Wow.
So when you get up to 49,000 years, you approach the limit of the carbon-14 dating equipment, 50,000 to 60,000 years. There's one piece of equipment to get up to 80,000, but it's out in California. They won't work with us. So anyway, these are the references. We won't go into that. This is me when I worked in that scintillation counter laboratory. This is the equipment that my buddy Bob Garvey, who was a pharmacist, he set up the equipment based upon the early experimentations by Dr. Libby, who was the founder and Nobel Prize winner of the carbon-14 dating method. We didn't get very far with this, but one thing we did discover, and this is important, our sedimentologist asked us to see if we could get an age for linen by heating the linen in an oven at around 400 Fahrenheit, because this simulates the Shroud of Turin being heated by accident in a fire in Turin, Italy, in 1515 or something like that, AD. The Russians have shown that ancient linen that was dated archaeologically around 800 AD, when heated, developed an age like 400 or 500 years younger. So the Shroud of Turin, it was dated by major accelerated mass spectrometer labs and given an age of around 1250 AD. So the Russians have shown that ancient linen is a special cloth, can absorb modern carbon-14 when it's got caught in a high temperature situation. So this was evidence that we produced. We took modern linen here and we put it in aqua regia, I think it was, and the gases came off. We collected in a scintillate solution and dated it. It came up with a futuristic date, okay? So we confirmed what the Russians apparently learned when they did the carbon-14 dating of ancient linen, which developed a younger age from 800 to maybe 1200 years. That's the major thing that came out of this research in the 3 years I was with them in 2000 to 2003. Now we're going to climb the hills. This is the stream bed and the Fact Research Station. It's a creationist research station of 35 acres, which includes those hills in the background. And these are the Badlands of Montana, loaded with dinosaur bones up to about here.
Wow.
Supposedly 2 million years have elapsed from the stream bed to almost the top.
Yeah.
Whole dinosaur bones, T-Rex teeth, and so forth.
Yep.
And so you notice how symmetrical the strata is. Our sedimentologists say these were laid down at the same time. He's got evidence for it from Russia. So do other creation scientists from Answers in Genesis, well, primarily from the Institute for Creation Research scientists.
Well, anyone who's seen sediments lay down and flat sediments like that, they always lay down in layers like that. It's very normal.
But it's not based upon a time factor.
No, not at all.
Not at all. It's based upon a good friend, sedimentologist from France, has learned, has laid down based upon the size of the particle, the density of the particles, and the speed of the water carrying the sediments.
That's right.
And if this was during the flood of Noah, we expect that the speed was in excess of maybe 1,000 miles an hour.
Oh, it would have been a mess, wouldn't it?
It was a mess. And also cavitation occurs at those high speeds. A dam in Arizona, Glen Canyon Dam, was almost destroyed by cavitation when the water flew through the sluices after a heavy winter melting period. They tried to get rid of the water so the dam wouldn't explode. And they sent it through the sluices and the cavitation occurred, and the cavitation tore up the dam in the sluices. They're 30 foot deep. You remember seeing that?
I have seen that. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
What it can do, massive damage.
Cavitation occurs here, and we're wondering, but we haven't got the research money, but we're wondering if cavitation could cause potassium argon, these other methods of long age dating, to interfere with the age concepts.
You've seen Steve Austin's research where he dated the lava dome on Mount St. Helens, right?
Around St. Helens and in New Zealand.
So the initial assumption that they start at zero is incorrect, isn't it?
Yes.
So,
and he got ages for modern Mount St. Helens explosion of 1980s, ages of 300,000 up to 3 million years old.
Has anyone gone to date Hawaii now after this big lava?
Not that I know of.
It'd be a good opportunity.
I might get a hot foot if you try to play around with that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. This is my buddy, Bill White. He's my manager of our website. He's done a fantastic job. He's collecting carbonized wood from a tree-like material at the bottom of the creek bed from Montana. And we got an age, you see, of 49,190. And look at the huge range you get here, plus or minus. So that was the base of that 200-foot tall research station. When you get these old fossils, you'll get this range. But it's a carbon-14 age. Now, again, here's a picture of that same hillside, only again you see the rapid deposition that has taken place by the flood, so you get laminar structures, just like it did at Mount St. Helens, only there it was really laminar. I mean, it's just small, only a millimeter in size, where these structures, and you can imagine a flood carrying this kind of material like 2 feet thick. That's what you see along the Paluxy River, 1 to 2 feet thick, the strata, and with dinosaur human footprints interspersed on each strata. At least on 3 strata so far there are footprints. And then in the middle of the river, we assume that the 4 or 5 strata that are left along the riverbank will contain footprints also. Right here is the peoples up on the right-hand corner walking in a path. There they are, right there. And this is a coal seam, which is supposedly 50,000 years, and we dated that, and we got 42,560. The other one of the base was 45,000 years. I don't think that means a hill of beans difference between the two of them. We just get old ages. But they did this on an accelerator mass spectrometer. So the ages was only plus or minus 340 versus like 6,000 or 7,000 for the one done on the old beta method dating.
They've dated a lot of coal beds around, and they're all around 40,000 years from what I've heard.
Coal ranges, according to the Creation Research Group, they wrote a paper and it was presented at the American Geophysical Union in 2003, and their ages were 45,000 to around 53,000.
Okay, wow. Yep.
They also presented data for diamonds, which were in the range, well, I'd say about 55,000 to 65,000. And another group, the laboratory in California, dated diamonds from South America, and they got a range of 65,000 to 70,000. So it'll be different depending on the region where they're dated from.
Yeah.
South America was higher radiocarbon ages than the ages that ICR obtained from South Africa.
Do you have any theories as to why? Don't ask.
No. Well, I'm not going there.
Okay, fair enough.
Can't trick me. Let's get back to the bones of contention.
Yep,
This is the way you cover the bone initially with plaster of Paris. This is a femur, a very large femur. I'm going to show you a picture later. You have to put the wood on there to support it, and then eventually it found its way to our 2005 sawing activity. This was we had about 15 people joining us in sawing this particular femur bone, which is 9 inches thick for a Triceratops and 48 inches long. That's the femur.
Wow.
So we did here, 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 and here. So these are the dates. These are weights of the samples. These are in grams. And there was approximately 30 milligrams collagen in this one sample here, and we got a date of 30,890 for the collagen. Now that's a high percentage of collagen, really, for something that old. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, thousands of years old. I remember these bones were in the water in the flood of Noah for a long time period, 8 months. They get soaked and the collagen will dissipate. So we only get full amount of collagen. This one here, we dated with the beta equipment. You notice that the range is 33,830 plus or minus 3,000 roughly. Here we got a date of plus or minus 200. That's the difference between the newer AMS method and the old beta method. This is Otis Klein, who is sawing the same bone. The lady here is a B. Hirschlacker, who is our paleochronology group advisor and director of excavations. She is a fine lady and has just survived a couple of surgeries recently. Now, this is my dear wife, Peggy, along with 15 others, took turns sawing. She did not like dinosaur bones. She thought they were ugly, but you could see her smiling. She saw the bone in half. Okay, 2005 when we did that. Now, this is, again, the two dates that we just showed you. This is the inside of this particular femur bone. Do not all look like that at all. This is a little unusual. Most of them are just fossilized. Like we found collagen in this area right here.
So looking at that picture, the ones further on the outside of the bone.
Yeah, we
They were
dated the
older.
outside of the bone and the inside and got concordant ages.
They're about the same. Is that
Not the same, yeah. Concordant, I mean within several thousand years of each other.
okay?
But one area that had a crack in it had no carbon left at all. So if you come across a bone that has lots of cracks in it, you're not going to find any collagen, maybe not even any carbon. Because when we did a core sample of that same femur, we did it accidentally near a crack. And apparently water got in there and dissolved out the organic material and took away everything within an inch or two of the crack. But the rest of the bone was protected by fossilization or whatever. So these are my hands with gloves on, scraping out the particles that you see right here we collected. This is just another dinosaur bone. This is the hadrosaur. This is what some of them look like, full of porosity. And this is the same bone, but we're able to get clumps from this one, that section of the bone, and we got a date of 23,170. That's a hadrosaur. We actually saw two bones in 2005. One was a Triceratops, one was a hadrosaur, but they're the same size, about 9 inches in diameter. And by the way, we can't make a mistake with a ancient buffalo or modern buffalo. Their femurs are only 2 inches in diameter. Okay. I checked on that recently because I didn't want to have an evolution of claim, oh, you misdated, you dated a modern bison bone.
Has anyone mapped the genome of any of these? Was there any DNA left in any of this?
No. I don't think any of the dinosaur bones, there's some claims of some DNA left, but they're only scraps, you know, like just a section.
Yeah.
No way they can build up to a critter from that.
Just seeing to what they're related to, you know.
Well, Australia.
Not creating Jurassic Park or anything.
Scientists, these good scientists from Australia, you do have good ones here and there. And a creationist.
Couple.
Evolutionist. But this guy was not, he was an evolutionist, I'm sure. But he has studied the half-life of DNA and has discovered that the DNA half-life is only about 500 years compared to carbon-14 of 5,000 years. So DNA should not last at all. So if they find any DNA in dinosaur bones, which they have, it shouldn't be there. Just like collagen should not be there. I mean, this is a fairy tale. Evolution is a fairy tale. I got in an argument with a evolutionist who says, an atheist, he says, prove that God exists. Otherwise, you're a liar. Well, I went back at him. I said, well, prove that evolution is true. Okay, prove it. The evidence shows that it's a fairy tale. So I had some fun with him and we went back and forth, but he always came back and said, you guys that believe in God are liars.
Yep.
Because you have no proof. I think about that now, Ben, and see what kind of arguments you come up with other than God provides evidence for his existence by giving us the Shroud of Turin, miracle at Canaan, of changing water into wine. Evolution would take a few years to do that, wouldn't they?
If Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead and didn't convince anyone, so what hope have we got?
That's right. He said that himself. He said, you'll never believe anything Moses said. Okay, whatever.
There were genuine people that did see the evidence and take it for what it was, though. And that's who we're looking for.
They're both the belief systems. We just have more evidence God has given us than the devil has given them.
That's right.
If you're pardon my bringing Satan into the picture here.
That's fine.
Okay. Radiocarbon dating analysis report. This is showing concordance. This is one of the best concordance we received from this laboratory. This is a hadrosaurus, and we dated the bioapatite at 25,670, charred bone 25,170, collagen 23,170, and this humic acid was a known contaminant. So they could take the contaminant and date it. They can date the collagen, they can date the outer bone. This was really an outer bone, not the charred portion, and so forth. Well, what are you going to say? That we are liars? And the laboratory gave us the results. And somebody else has confirmed that they were a hadrosaur and a Triceratops. Oh, man.
Well, it's all they've got. Otherwise, all those scientists for all the years have been lying to students.
They've been lying to themselves when they were students, and it goes back 150 years.
That's right.
It's a mind-changing problem, okay? So you got to hit them over the head with a dinosaur bone to get their attention. That's what we're trying to do. So here we are in front of the Moscow Convention Center in 2011, and we had been refused to present our data that we had given in 2009 in Italy. This is Joe Taylor, our paleontologist. He is a confirmed believer in creation. I worked with him for 20 years, starting over in Wyoming. He found amber for us in Wyoming, and we dated it eventually. So this is Hugh Owen of the Colby Center for the Study of Creation. I'm a member of that organization, just like I am with the American Geophysical Union and the Asiatic Oceania Geophysics Society. I've been a member since 2011 in both organizations. Now, these two guys won't belong to me. They don't like them. I just stayed on because I'm a scientist. Okay. Then I got the grandfather clause, so I don't have to pay anything. This is a closer look at Joe. This is me holding up signs. You can read these when you study it. But Joe is a primitive Baptist. That's his faith. Belongs to a primitive Baptist church in Crosbyton, Texas. I've been there, and people asked me at a Bible study meeting, what faith are you? So I said, I'm a primitive Catholic. And everybody roared. Everybody thought it was hilarious. And Hugh Owen is Catholic, and he started the Colby Center for the Study of Creation in the year 2000 and invited me to become a member. So I got him to go down to Biloxi 3 or 4 times.
You don't have to answer this, but has the Pope actually said anything about the age of the Earth and evolution and things like that? And how do you respond to what he said?
Well, I do know that he is a theistic evolutionist.
Okay.
And I think that is a horrible, disastrous mistake on his part. Well, probably most of the Jesuits believe that way, and they preach it. The Dominicans do too.
Huh.
There are exceptions, and God bless them, but it's a horrible situation in both non-Catholic and Catholic mainstream organizations. You know that yourself.
Oh, absolutely. It's everywhere now.
It's that way everywhere. They have fallen for Satan's lies, which go back to the Enlightenment period, when some of the philosophers of that period, like Rene Descartes, you ever heard of him?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
Philosopher and mathematicians. He also got involved with the occult. Okay, Hugh has found that out, and it was he who suggested that the Earth has not changed any. It's been that way since creation. In other words, ignored the Noah's flood and Genesis.
Yeah, Second Peter, isn't it? All things continue as they were from the foundation of the world.
Yeah, he set the stage for evolution. But of course, our good friend Louis Pasteur and Francisco Redi, those two showed that the belief in evolution at that time period, the 19th century, for the famous guy who cleaned up our milk for us, pasteurization.
Yep.
And Francisco Redi was an Italian and Pasteur was French. But Redi showed that flies do not evolve spontaneously from dead meat, rotten meat. He performed this with beakers, with cloth over the beakers and then completely enclosed. And then Pasteur did the same thing with vessels with necks on them. And he showed that bacteria did not form in soup if you had no access for air to get into the vessel. And so bacteria was ruled out as being spontaneously evolved. Darwin came along and he kind of new idea. We won't go into him. Now, this is just another picture of that Triceratops. This is a big mistake I made. See this right here? I'm showing you this elongated thing. I think that was a blood vessel. And had we used EDTA like Mary Schweitzer did, we'd have probably been able to dissolve out the calcium carbonate and got a flexible blood vein.
Oh, wow.
But we just missed the boat, shall we say. We in a hurry to get it carbon-14 dated. So we sent in the sample. We should have saved that aside, but we didn't. So that's research. You blunder sometimes, quite a bit of the time, really. Old carbon contamination is a reason for date variation among dinosaur bones and even other fossils. We've shown that variations agree even between diamonds, even between dinosaur bones. So there's variations. Yeah. But we had 23,000 to 39,000 years are always consistent and reproducible for dinosaur bones from Texas to Alaska. But based upon old carbon contamination, they could be 3 to 5 times younger, less than 10,000 years. These carbon-14 ages, however, are about 2,000 times younger than what evolutionist dating methods say. The dinosaur and human footprints together, plus distinct worldwide dinosaur depictions of the last 33,000 and 4,000 years, confirm carbon dating.
There are obviously a few rebuttals, specifically the rebuttal of contamination.
Oh, yeah.
Because they always say it with diamonds, with coal beds, now with dinosaur bones. It's always contamination. It's their magical solve everything.
That's correct. But basically, every laboratory uses acids and bases. Sodium hydroxide removes modern materials that could give you a young age.
Okay.
We use that in the laboratory where I worked for 3 years. And the University of Georgia lab guy who I talked with in the 10 years that we worked with him, he says that you can repeat the decontamination pre-treatments repeatedly. After the second one, the dates do not change. They only change slightly from number 1 contamination treatment to the second decontamination pre-treatment. Okay. And this is what I had to ask him that question because I was getting this iron looking color after each decontamination. I ran about 5 or 6. He said, don't worry about that. It's meaningless. The dates do not change after the first most of the time and never anymore after the second one. He did that research in Russia.
So I don't know whether this is too technical, but why does sodium hydroxide not get rid of older stuff?
Well, hydrochloric acid is used to remove the barial carbonates like calcium carbonate, magnesium carbonates, and so forth. Because calcium carbonate, when it's in liquid form, when it gets concentrated, it precipitates out. Okay. And probably is why Mary Schweitzer's soft tissue survived, because it was covered with calcium carbonate. When it precipitated out around the cellular structures and so forth. Going back to 1840, the same situation was discovered by a leading geologist of that time period who worked in Nova Scotia. He wrote a paper and submitted to the geology group in England. It was published, and I have the publication because one of my associates had the original paper and sent me copies.
Right.
But what he did was use hydrochloric acid to dissolve calcium carbonate from wood. He could see the wood, he could sense it was wood, so he just put it in hydrochloric acid, dissolved it, dried it, and he ended up with fresh wood. And he burned it. It was burnable.
Wow.
After it dried out and everything. It was flexible, just like soft tissue. So this is why I could come up with the argument that Mary Schweitzer had to keep their evolution theory and her job intact by not carbon-14 dating, and iron is just used as a theoretical thing and an assumption. The real protection for soft tissue, collagen, and wood, when it is covered by limestone, is the calcium carbonate.
Right. I found out the other day that she is a theistic evolutionist too, so you probably get on.
Right. The skeptics, I love skeptics, even though they may be atheistic, as long as they maintain a skeptical viewpoint. I love them. I have a close friend now from a year and a half ago who is a former lawyer, but a brilliant fellow. He's writing fictional books in his retirement age, and he's penniless. He's penniless. He's a skeptic, but he loves the stuff I tell him. He's still skeptical and trying to come up with reasons why they're right. Scientific reasons and logical reasons why what I'm doing may not be true. But we sit there and talk to each other and laugh. Well,
Very good.
The only thing I could say to you is that the main conclusion is that there's no 65 to 150 million years between dinosaurs and man. Those years apparently do not exist, as dinosaur bones give ages ranging from 22,000 to 41,000 years on AMS, sensitive to 60,000 years. You've got fossil human footprints and along with dinosaur depictions all over the world. I think they even have some in Australia, don't they?
There would be a few.
I think the Aborigines in Australia.
Interesting. I haven't heard about that one specifically, surprisingly.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there is. But it's rare, but there's some evidence for it.
Now that you mention it, I think there was a plesiosaur style image in Aboriginal painting.
We have them on the Grand Canyon, several walls in the Grand Canyon region.
Interesting.
Brontosaurus type critters.
We'll leave it at that. So
yeah, let's leave it at that. Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure. Nice meeting with you, Ben.
Yeah, very nice meeting with you too.
God bless, and figure out a way how I can get to Australia.
Very good. Thank you very much. And
you're welcome.
See you next time.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Okay. God bless. Bye-bye. Okay, so thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate you sitting through the technical difficulties. Now, if you didn't quite understand the science, basically anything with carbon-14 in it is younger than 80,000 years old. When they say, oh, it's contamination by uranium, not really possible, except in a very small area. Basically all coal beds, almost all, have carbon-14 in them. And all dinosaur bones that have soft tissue have carbon-14 in them. And you also find diamonds have carbon-14 in them. All these different things, which means all those things that are supposed to be millions and millions of years old are far less. They're less than 70,000 years old, and realistically less than 10,000 years old. So I hope that builds your faith. If you want more faith-building stuff, go back, check out Daniel Unsealed, and click the bell and subscribe for notifications for Daniel Unsealed, which is coming up. And also there's some more of these interviews coming up. And thank you for watching. See you in the next one. God bless.